The Lawyer Who Rocks is brought to you by Hughes Media Law Group. You can visit us at hmlglaw.com. Keep up with the podcast on social media at HMLG Law on all major platforms, and be sure to follow us there. Thank you for listening, and enjoy this episode of The Lawyer Who Rocks. My name is Jolene Winther Hughes. I am a lawyer who rocks.
When it comes to having your back, there ain't nobody better. This you better believe. Jolene,
I'm really excited to have my guest, Tori Dunlap, here today. She is the founder of Her First 100K, and she is an internationally recognized podcast host, a financial advisor, and a money educator specializing in wealth for millennial women. And she saved $100,000 by the time she was 25, which is mind-blowing to me and probably to many of us. And so it is very fitting to welcome Tori today to help us learn more about finance and why it's so important as women who are founding businesses to really just focus on the finance side of things. You're killing it, Tori. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Well, I always like to start from the beginning because people don't just become recognized podcast hosts and financial advisors overnight. So we need to start and find out a little bit about you from the beginning. Where did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, and right outside of Seattle, and had parents who were really committed to educating me financially. And I thought that was the case for everybody. I thought everybody knew not to overspend on credit cards and everybody knew how to invest. And of course, I realized very quickly that that wasn't the case. And I was the friend all of my friends were coming to for advice and guidance. And so I graduated college in May of 2016. Trump got elected, of course, not soon after that. And through just research and conversations with my friends, I started to realize that we had this huge inequality gap, not just, of course, in general, knew that, but especially when it comes to financial education. The way we discuss money, the way just our society deals with men who have money versus women who have money is just very, very different. And that I think we don't have any sort of equality for any marginalized group until we have financial equality. So I started the blog that later became Her First 100K a month later in December of 2016, and was running it on the side of my 9-to-5 in marketing, and ended up growing it to the point where I could take it full time in late 2019. And then craziness from there, 2 million followers, a #1 business podcast called Financial Feminist, and really a global movement to use financial education as a form of protest.
Tell me about what were some of the most valuable lessons your parents taught you?
One of the big things, I'm an only child, but my dad was teaching me everything about money that wasn't, the stuff that was unfortunately stereotypically women driven, the budgeting, how to save on day-to-day expenses, the management of the household expenses, but also the wealth building activities. It's 2021, and still how we discuss money and how we educate kids is, yeah, again, women handle the coupon clipping and the how to create 5 meals under $5, right? And for men, it's how to start investing in the stock market and how to buy homes and grow your money and build wealth. And so one of the great things that, me as a woman, me as a daughter, I was taught not just the day-to-day, balancing of the checkbook kind of activities, but also how do you build, large and lasting wealth. And so that's a tip to, especially if you have children of any gender identity, make sure you're educating them as though you would educate your sons. Talk about the same things you're talking about, especially in regards to these larger financial moves around building wealth. The other thing I think my parents did really well is that they didn't just talk the talk, they walked the walk. And I've heard plenty of clients come to me and they were like, my parents told me not to overspend on credit cards. And then I saw them max out their credit cards every month. Or it was like, keep a budget, be frugal, but then we would spend crazy lavishly on things we couldn't afford. So I saw my parents do the things they were telling me to do. I literally saw my mom balance the checkbook on the 13th and the 21st of every month. She still does that. I think she uses Quicken from 98. And, I saw my dad negotiate our cable bill. He would call Comcast once every 3 months and negotiate our bill down. And that's something that I still do. So it wasn't just Tori, don't overspend on credit cards, be a responsible spender. Here's how to save money. It was also, I'm going to actively show you. They showed me mindful spending. I was lucky enough and I was privileged enough to not want for anything. We weren't, rich by any means. We didn't have everything we wanted, but it was a great balance where, my parents were really frugal in a lot of regards, but we still traveled every year. We still got to, travel, and that was something that was important to them. So, both in my own finances and in my work now, I talk about the fact that you don't have to stop spending money. You just have to stop spending money on things that you don't like or things that you don't give a shit about. You know, I think prioritizing your values and figuring out how you can use your money to really bring yourself the most joy while also, of course, being responsible for the future is a balance that is achievable. And I saw that. I saw, we're frugal on these things so that we can afford to do things that we really love, which was, yeah, for my parents especially, it was traveling.
But how do you feel like those lessons have enabled you to get so far at such a young age?
One of the big things, I didn't study finance. I didn't even study business in college. I went to college and got a BS in organizational communication, which is like marketing with less math, and I have a BA in theater. This was not the plan. If you would have told me 5 years ago, Tori, you're going to be a money educator, I would have laughed in your face. Like that was not the plan. And a theater, I think, and entrepreneurship are actually very similar. And I had a lot of that narrative. I did my first show, I did my first musical when I was 5, and for me, it was like, if you want something, you go get it, right? Of like, if you want to do this thing, you figure out who you need to talk to, who you need to meet to get it. And you're going to hear no 99 times, but that one yes might change your life. Especially in the early days before, her first 100K was, as big as it is now, people would ask me, they'd be like, how did you get on Good Morning America? And I'm like, I pitched myself to be on Good Morning America. I found the person I needed to talk to. And actually, I was on New York Magazine first. So it was like 7 degrees to Kevin Bacon, right? To like get on GMA. And that I think was a combination of theater with the business of you have to put yourself out there. And if you hear no, that has nothing really to do with you, right? Theater is a perfect example of that, of like, you're not tall enough, or they need somebody who has blonde hair, or the person that they've already cast as the male romantic lead, they need to have chemistry with that person. And I just don't, right? It very rarely has to do with me personally, right? It's more just like what you bring to the table or the timing or something that's out of your control. And so I think for me, it was just like, okay, if I want this thing, I'm going to go get it. And I'm going to be the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. And I'm going to navigate it until I figure it out. And entrepreneurship taught me that, theater taught me that. And yeah, it's what's translated into, me running my business now of, yeah, okay, I want this thing, I'm going to make it happen. And I want to grow this business on the side of my 9 to 5. Okay, I'll figure it out. It was a lot of that, of just putting myself out there and not being afraid of hearing no. And then knowing it was just no for right now. Doesn't mean no always. I could come back if I wanted.
So you went to college in Portland and you talked about it earlier for communication theater. And then you also saved your first 100K by the time you're 25. How did you do that as a theater major?
Yeah, it was a great question. The first thing I like to acknowledge is that there's privilege as part of my story. I worked 3 jobs while I was in school. I would work when I came home from college. I got like $80,000 worth of merit scholarships. My parents also saved for college for me and were able to financially contribute. So part of me saving the 100K was the fact that I didn't have student loans. And that wasn't a handout check for my parents, but my parents also weren't absent. So that was a huge thing, is I would not have hit my 100K as quickly as I did if I had student loans. And that's part of the work that I do now, is we have just a ludicrous student debt crisis in this country. And it prevents so many people from being able to be financially stable, especially in my generation. So that's the first thing I like to acknowledge. The other part of it is I just made a lot of strategic financial choices. I started investing when I was 21. I opened up a Roth IRA as soon as I started my first big girl job. I negotiated every single job or every single salary increase. I negotiated every job I ever held. I was also running what later became her first 100K on the side of my 9 to 5. So I was saving a portion of my 9 to 5 income and investing a portion of my 9 to 5 income. But everything that I took home from the business after taxes and expenses, I got to put in an investment account. So, I had 2 sources of income. I had my 9 to 5 income, which I could live off of, plus a little bit of savings, and my business. I got to save everything after taxes and expenses. So, yeah, it was a combination of, again, balancing. Like, I didn't deprive myself in any way. I still got to travel. I still got to go out to eat, but I was really intentional on where my money went and making sure that I was putting aside money in savings and investments first.
Did that help you maybe learn how to advocate more for yourself because you've learned how to advocate for a product or how to pitch a product or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, there's no brand story I tell better than my own. And that's part of the reason why I knew I had to be an entrepreneur is I was, working corporate and realized within 2 weeks, I was like, oh, this is not for me. I don't like making somebody else rich. I don't like being sexually harassed at work. I don't like working for these people who I don't respect, especially men. It was the first job out of school, was a really great experience in a lot of ways, but it was also like the most like misogynistic, like male dominated company. And so, yeah, for me, it was the realization that like, oh, I wanted to work for myself, and realizing that my storytelling ability, which is one of my strengths, I can use to figure out how to craft my own story. How do I craft it in a way to be on, Good Morning America or be quoted in the New York Times? How do I tell my story and tell the Her First 100K story in a compelling enough way to get somebody on board? And marketing is all about trust, right? And it's about establishing credibility and building trust with your audience. And so, you know, that's what we do at Her First 100K. We are a marketing forward, marketing first company of, building our brand, building trust with people, and crafting our story and telling it well.
Did you feel like earning and putting away 100K was just the pivotal that you came up with that number to begin telling the story, to begin really creating this platform? Was that deliberate?
No, the 100K, my personal 100K was not tied to Her First 100K at first, or what the business before that. It was like October of 2018. I had my blog, which I was talking about like life as a 20 something woman, and then realized I wanted to focus on money specifically. But I didn't want to just be the budgeting person, or I didn't just want to be the investing person or the, mindful spending person. I wanted to talk about all things money. And I wanted to approach it from that perspective women, of women just getting started, and also this financial education as a form of protest. And I was actually sitting down, it was just like a networking group. And I don't know what compelled me to tell the story, because I had only talked to a couple people in my life about, this goal of trying to save 100K, but I told like two strangers. And I was telling them like, my journey to save 100K, but also that I had this business and I was trying to rebrand it, but I was like panicking, trying to figure out what it was. And the woman just looked at me and she was like, your first 100K. That's the business. That's the new name. And then this is a long story, but somebody else had yourfirst100k.com. And then I was in a total panic of like, this is the name, but I can't get it. And I didn't have a lot of money then. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to have to like broker a deal for this domain? And then I was on vacation in New Orleans with a friend. And at the like last day we were there, we had avoided talking about business the entire time, which was true vacation for me. And we were sitting at a bar and I was telling him what was going on. And he was like, I know you probably tried this, but what about Her First 100K? And I was like, no, I have not. And whipped out my phone, looked up like the domain registry, and no one owned it. And I bought it for 20 bucks in a bar in New Orleans. And so, yeah, it was very much, speaking of brand, like the brand story that I could fit the business into and tied to my own. Pretty much every press hit I got, especially in the early days, was around my 100K journey. So it ended up working out perfectly. And I remember telling a good friend of mine like what the business name was. And he teases me about this all the time because he looked me dead in the eye and he goes, that is going to change your life. And I was like, you think it's that good? He's like, yeah, it'll change your life. And it did.
So you specialize in assisting millennial women with money. Who are your clients and what do you do for them in the company?
Yeah. So I used to do a lot more coaching, private one-on-one coaching. I still offer that, but I do less of that. So I work now as like an educator and speaker. So a lot of my work is building our online platforms. We have 1.7 million followers on TikTok. We have another like 375,000 on Instagram. And that's up, oh my gosh, like 6,000%. March of 2020, we had 30,000 followers. Now we have 2 million. So it's just been wild. So a lot of my work is, in these online spaces and creating online communities and providing free content that way, but then selling courses or workshops to people directly. And then a lot of brand work, working with brands I believe in a traditional influencer marketing route, but also affiliates, them sponsoring my podcast, et cetera. So we've kind of become a media company now that, we're a feminist company and finance is our medium. We're not a finance company who happens to be feminist. We are women first and money is just our avenue. So a lot of the one-on-one work I used to do now has converted more into, these kind of online spaces and communities where I can impact as many people as possible, still on an individual level, if that makes sense.
What to you is financial feminism?
Financial feminism is seeing the equality picture again as an act of protest when in regards to money. So I don't think we have any sort of equality for marginalized groups until we have that financial equality. So becoming financially educated as a form of protest to get closer to equality and then bringing your community along with you. When I started learning more about it, it just was so obvious to me that everything, again, in the equality picture is tied to money, right? Wage gaps, investing gaps, just the ability to leave a toxic situation you don't want to be in anymore because you have the financial means to do so, whether that's a job or an abusive relationship. Or, for me, I can drop a client now, even if they're a really great client. I don't have to work with them if I don't want to work with them. We have the money to be able to build relationships with people we want to be in business with. So I think ultimately financial feminism is having that financial education and that financial foundation in order to, progress in your own life and bringing other people along with you.
Well, how is financial stability feminist?
In every way and shape and form. I think if you pay off your debt as a woman, inherently that is a feminist act, because not only is, a predatory company not making money off of you anymore, but you are no longer a statistic, right? You have that money that frees up to do other things. And this is the whole ethos of, my book that I'm writing, and everything we're about at Her First 100K is literally any act of you getting your financial shit together is feminist inherently, because society wants you to play small. Society wants you to not have money. The narrative that talking about money is taboo is a patriarchal narrative where the patriarchy wants to profit off your silence, right? So they tell you, oh, don't talk about money. It's taboo. It's impolite. It's gauche. Don't have a conversation about it. They're talking about money, right? They've built these financial systems that don't benefit you. You better believe they're having money conversations, right? Same with the narrative of like how wanting money is bad or evil. You shouldn't want money because that's evil or that's greedy, right? You should just be grateful for the job you have. Don't ask for more money. You should just be grateful you have a job at all, right? These are the narratives that we're continually told as women. Play small, don't make noise, just stay where you're at, because the patriarchy stays in power that way. They profit off of our inaction. They profit off of our silence. Investing is just for men, right? Or like investing is intimidating. This is another narrative perpetuated by the patriarchy in order for women to not have financial standing and a financial foundation. So any act of you getting your financial shit together is inherently feminist, because it's going against the societal norm that you shouldn't have money and shouldn't want money, and you shouldn't be rich.
How do women being financially successful, how does that create new cycles of wealth and opportunity?
You have choices when you have money, right? Like I was saying before, is you're able to leave that toxic situation, or you can start a business, or you can marry a person that you love, not a person that you're going to be financially dependent on, right? You're marrying because you want to get married to this person, not because you need somebody to take care of you, right? Or you can get divorced because you're not dependent on somebody to take care of you, right? You have your own money. You can donate to causes you believe in. You can retire early. You can travel. You can have kids. You can not have kids. I think everything opens up to you, right? And so for me, it's like, yeah, same thing. We have a team now of 10, and the vast majority of my employees, I think 9 out of those 10 are women. And, giving them a financial standing and a financial future that they may not have had previously, taking part of my wealth and donating it to causes I believe in. And I want to eventually be an angel investor and be able to, invest in seeing other companies grow. So, and then just talking about money. It's so important to just have that be part of the conversation, because again, still in 2021, it's taboo. We're still not allowed as a society to talk about money. We will statistically talk about anything else: sex, death, politics, religion. We'll talk about anything else that's taboo before we'll have a financial conversation, especially as women. And it's holding us back from getting paid fairly. It's holding us back from getting out of debt faster and feeling less alone in that process of getting out of debt, because there is so much shame and judgment. We can, again, start businesses or feel confident investing because we see other women doing it. So I think, again, the entire world starts to change when women have access to money and feel comfortable with money.
You know, I hear a lot people that are in their 20s and 30s lamenting, whether it's on social media or whether else, just that they're not ever going to be able to buy a house. And I remember, honestly, when I was in my 20s and 30s, we all said the same thing. Like, we're never going to be able to buy a house. Well, I ended up buying a house. Is it different today?
Yes. Every generation, I think, has had it quote unquote worse than the last one, but we can literally see the numbers of like, it is so much more difficult to purchase a home right now, or so much more difficult to feel like you have a financial foundation, a financial footing. You and I could talk about this forever, of like a larger conversation around like mental health in this country and how that's contributed to, wages stagnating. Our phones are contributing to it, just our isolation, the pandemic now. There's just so many things. And this is what I mean of like money's tied to everything. It's like this whole money doesn't buy happiness is complete bullshit. And we've proven that. We've proven that, the more money you make, I think it's up to $80,000 a year. $80,000 a year is like the sweet spot. Everything you make over that, like your happiness plateaus. But until you get to that $80,000 a year, your happiness increases every step you get that's closer. Because yeah, you're able to be in a space that's bigger, or you're able to, move to a place that's closer to work and you don't have to commute as far. Or there's, again, all of this flexibility that opens up when we're making, gasp, a livable wage.
What is your goal for her first 100K in the next little bit? Like, you're doing so many great things. What are some things you're proud of, and what are some things you want to accomplish?
We get messages. It used to say every day, then I used to say every hour. Now it's got to be every 10 minutes, from women that our work is making an impact, that is, it's changing their lives. They're able to leave their abusive husbands because they have money, or, abusive partners. They're able to negotiate $20,000 raises. They're able to pay off their student loans. Like, it's just the coolest thing. So I'm making 45 times what I was making at corporate, which is absolutely amazing. I'm able to give people jobs, and our work is impacting over 2 million women across the world. And we plan on, making that number triple, quadruple. And that's the coolest thing, is I get to make a lot of money and get to make other people a lot of money at the same time.
That's amazing. How important is it to work with legal advisors and financial advisors?
Yeah. Well, you are my attorney. Hello. I probably did it actually too late. And I can be honest about that. I probably worked with you all and your team later than I probably should have. Both because I was afraid of the cost, because I'm very frugal. And also, I either hear two camps. One is like, oh, you can do everything without attorneys. And I don't think that's true. And the other one is like, oh, you needed a lawyer immediately. And I also don't think that's true. For me, it became clear as we were hiring people, and as we were starting to go into long-term contracts with people, it became very clear of like, okay, we need to lawyer up. We need to have people on our side who, have more expertise, and this is their job, and can take care of us in this way. So I think especially when you're growing your business, and at the rate we grew in the past year and a half, having someone to give you advice and to advise you is huge. So it's not just, the contracts and the insurance and all of that. It's also just, you and I have had a Zoom call or two about, just strategic, how do we think about building the business, and how do we make sure that we're protected in doing that, and that we're doing it in the right way. And what I
Yeah.
really appreciate about you and your experience too is that you understood, for me, that it wasn't just making decisions internally, it was also the optics of these decisions. So for me, we have an audience who's super committed to what we do and follows everything. But, and rightfully so, they keep us accountable when they need to keep us accountable. And that's an experience that a lot of businesses don't have, that same level of like public accountability. So we want to make sure we're doing the right thing because it is the right thing and feels right for us, but also, to be honest, looks like the right thing. We want something that is also, that takes care of people and that aligns with our business values, both privately and publicly.
Well, what is up next for her first 100K?
For me personally, it is digital nomading. I am packing up my apartment literally a week from today. I will be moving out of the apartment I've been in for 4 years and really built my business in, which is crazy. And I am off to France and Italy for 2 months to dedicate to writing my book. So my team is running the business while I'm gone. We're launching a merch line, podcast season 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we're just really excited to continue, hopefully making an impact on our world at large.
Well, I love working with you for sure. I mean, it's been really just fun to, I don't know, collaborate and brainstorm about, ways to make a bigger impact. And obviously, I could go on and on about all of the ways that money management and how important that is, not just, for women, for everybody, but especially for women. You can teach women to harness their power and really, I don't know, advocate for wealth wellness and for just business wellness and for just wellness, and really feel like you're worth it. Like you're worth the investment into yourself. And so for all that you're doing just from, from such a young age, you're so far ahead of the curve. if more women at such a young age would really believe in themselves, we really will change the world. And so you're leading that. And for that, it makes you a badass. So I would like to know, what do you think makes you a badass?
Hmm. A lot of things. I really like the woman I am and the woman I'm becoming. The thing that's new is setting boundaries and keeping them. And I'm really proud of that because it's taken a lot of work. A lot of these things, like I've had to work really hard, but I'm a really good storyteller and that's kind of come naturally. Like that's a natural thing for me. I'm more proud of the things I really had to work at and continuing to work at. So, like the perfect example of me going to Europe, I have set so many hard boundaries around that. Like, I am there to write the book. If you absolutely need me and it's an emergency and the business is on fire, great, reach out to me. If it's not, I am giving you the ability and the tools you need to handle it yourself. And so, like, I've set really concrete boundaries about me being intentional on this trip and not doing any other work and not taking on any new projects. And that's been really hard for me because I'm really ambitious and I want to do it all. So it's been a really good test of that and something that I've constantly had to work at and get better at. But I'm really, really proud of that.
Tori, thank you so much for taking some time today to talk with me. Like I said, it's such a pleasure to work with you and get to know you, on an ongoing basis. And I'm just rooting for you in all ways.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to The Lawyer Who Rocks. If you've enjoyed it and want to hear more from business badasses, make sure you hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts. While you're at it, please give us a review. It really helps us grow the show. The Lawyer Who Rocks is produced and edited by Sean Fox and HMLG. A big thank you to Aaron Jones for our theme music, to Jeff Gilbert at Hairball Media for our graphics, and a huge thanks to my entire team at HMLG. If you need a lawyer who rocks, find us at hmlglaw.com. On the next episode,
showcase the person that you're working with or the property or the brand that you're working with in a way that galvanizes them to say, okay, this is something that my audience will care about.
this podcast has been brought to you by HMLG. If you need lawyers who rock, visit us on our website at hmlglaw.com and be sure to follow us on social media platforms at HMLG Law. You can also follow me on Instagram at The Lawyer Who Rocks. See, it sounds good when it's done, right? But we have moments like this, as you know.